Chapter 5, Adapting to Differences. Learning Objectives. 1. Examine how an awareness of the 4 basic personality traits is required for effective communication. 2. Explain why understanding and adapting to cultural diversity is important for effective communication. 3. Analyze how being aware of the communication differences between men and women increases leadership effectiveness. And 4. Describe strategies to overcome generational differences in communication. Fish don't know they're in water. In the same way, we don't see our culture. We only see culture when we are outside of our own, when we see others' differences. This is problematic. Since the times of ancient Greece, philosophers have sought to explain why people could witness the same event and interpret it so differently. Aristotle came up with dividing people into 4 types. They've gone through varied names since then, but in this book they are the analytical style, the driver style, the amiable style, and the expressive style. To find where you fit on the style's profile, you can review Chapter 5 in the book, or pause the PowerPoint to use this chart. To use this chart, pick where you land on each of the axis descriptions, and then find your quadrant. There is quite a nice bit of information in your book on each style. Oftentimes, we take these personality tests thinking about ourselves on our best days. Looking at those days, you are likely to land in many quadrants. This is normal. When not under stress, you can most certainly choose which style of behavior to best fit the situation. However, when you are under stress, it seems that your real or preferred style will tend to shine more. Think about you on a bad day. What style best describes you then? We can choose to act from any of the personality styles, with practice, but this can only happen if you have studied the other styles to the point that you can choose your behavior even in times of stress. In the ever-increasing world of a diverse workplace, it is important to know how to work with people from a variety of backgrounds, ages, races, ethnicities, genders, religion, etc. The list can go on and on. The Millennial and Gen Z generations are the most diverse groups of people to have ever walked in these United States or in North America. A masterful leader can learn to work with all groups. Cultures can be studied based on how they rely on the context of communication in order to gain meaning. Speaking of the low context versus high context cultures, where do you think the United States falls on this continuum? What about China, Mexico, Brazil, or Germany, some of our top trading partners? High context cultures use nonverbal cues as extremely important in interpreting messages. This includes people from Asia, the Arabic countries, and Southern European countries. Low context cultures have messages that are interpreted by relying more on explicitly using the language and on the meanings of words. There are few contextual clues. It includes most of North America, Germans, and Scandinavians. People of low context cultures are perceived as less attractive, knowledgeable, and trustworthy at times when determined by their high context peers. High context versus low context continuum. The lowest context country, Switzerland, then Germany, the Scandinavian countries, the United States, United Kingdom, other Northern European countries, the South American countries, the African countries, the Southern European countries, the Arabic countries, and the Asian countries are the most high context countries. How did you do? Where do you think the United States lands on this continuum, individualism versus collectivism? What about Mexico, Brazil, China, Japan, or Germany? Some of the standout features of an individualistic culture are that everyone has a right to their own opinion. One's commitments should include their own self-interest, their own education, their own debts. Education is seen as a lifelong process used to learn and acquire useful information and skills. People are expected to care for themselves and their immediate family. People have high individual self-awareness, and independence is valued. Friendship is a basic human need and can transcend from one group to the next. Decisions are made individually and are influenced by individual beliefs and opinions. Some of the standout features of a collectivistic culture are: opinions are shaped by the group and one expects to have one's opinions shaped by that group. Commitments are to the family rather than the self. Harmony, respect, family honor, and loyalty are top priorities. Education is for the young, where young people learn how to behave. Everyone is part of a larger group and is expected to be loyal to the group and care for the group's well-being. Group awareness is more important than self-awareness. Ties to others are highly valued. Friendships are determined by group memberships. Do not stray from the group. And the group makes decisions rather than the individuals. How do you think the United States ranks? Well, were you correct? The United States is the most individualistic country in many studies. Germany is the next of our chosen trade partners, then Brazil, Mexico, and China. Indonesia ranks as the most collectivistic country according to this chart. The next way to judge a culture is uncertainty avoidance or uncertainty acceptance. Cultures and people of those cultures tolerate or dislike knowing what will come next. It plays a tremendous role in planning for the future. Low tolerance for uncertainty cultures and people will worry more about the future and thus plan more. They are more loyal to an employer and will stay with that employer longer. They will accept senior leadership for the security it provides. High tolerance for uncertainty cultures and people are more willing to take risks in all areas of life. They are accepting of challenge and seek it on a regular basis. They are comfortable with challenging the rules and even breaking them to get to the goal. Where do you think the United States tends to fall on average as compared to our major trading partners? Were you correct? The United States tends to tolerate uncertainty quite well. Germany and Brazil need more planning. This chart suggests that China tolerates uncertainty more than the United States. How do you think the history of each country could have influenced the culture that developed within that country? The next method in judging a culture is looking at orientation, short-term versus long-term. A short-term orientation has several recognizable traits: absolute definitions of good and bad, the desire to seek a positive image and information about ourselves. The traditions are important as they are what help hold the society together. Religion and ideology play a large role in keeping things the way they are. The norms of behavior are fixed and very hard to change, regardless of the situation. Long-term orientation has several recognizable traits as well. The idea of good and bad differ depending on the situation, more of the middle way. There is a desire to be humble about accomplishments and to push off compliments. Traditions can be changed to fit the situation. There is less fundamentalism and more middle way, which helps to appease the most number of people, and the norms of society differ wildly depending on the situation. Where do you think the U.S. and its trading partners tend to land on the continuum? Short-term cultures are Philippines, most European countries, most American countries, African countries, and Pakistan. Longer-term oriented cultures, China, Japan, many countries of East Asia, and the Netherlands. Another way to judge a culture is whether or not they are more masculine or feminine. This does not mean who rules the country. This area of cultural understanding has nothing to do with all men or all women in charge. The researcher is using the term masculine and feminine to denote traits in a culture. Masculine cultures tend to use competition and assertiveness to ensure success in most any endeavor. There is a high level of "I am the winner" mentality in the culture. Conflict is handled as a win or lose situation, and there is thus more of an effort to control the conflict and dictate what will and will not happen. Feminine cultures are the opposite. There is less emphasis on winning and defeating a perceived enemy, and more emphasis on the quality of life one experiences. Close relationships with family, community, and work are important, and as such, compromise and negotiation are seen as preferred ways to manage conflict. There is a strong desire to find a win-win solution. For most of humanity, cultures were all masculine in nature. It is only in our recent past, of a few hundred years, that the feminine culture has emerged. Where do you think the U.S. and its trading partners land on this continuum? Note the artist grouped countries on this chart with religious and language overtones. The U.S. ranks 15 out of 53 on the masculine side. Trading Partners of Mexico, number 6, and Germany, number 10, and Japan, who is the most masculine culture when surveyed. They are all more masculine than the United States. Sweden is the most feminine culture. Equally between the genders is very important. Other feminine cultures are the Scandinavian countries, numbers 52, 51, and 50. Chile and Thailand join that group as well. Did you guess correctly where the U.S. landed? Adapting to social styles. To survive in global marketplace and compete in the international and multicultural environments, a good leader will study the trends and norms of many groups. Some guidelines for effective communication are to be patient and positive, to ask questions and write things down, to respect others and engage in self-reflection, to be aware of time and double-check solutions, to establish rules and exercise caution with humor. What will it take to survive in the business world as it becomes more and more global? It will take training, experience, and understanding of one's own culture and that of others. It will take an open mind and a willingness to be uncomfortable, yes, yet press on. Men and women communicate differently overall. Knowing how these differences impact meaning and understanding can help you in your career. Some differences. In eye contact, men tend to avoid a direct gaze as it is very challenging. Women seek extended eye contact, especially from other women. Men tend to talk for status, where problem solving is a goal, whereas women tend to talk for solidarity and connection is the goal. Men tend to make a decision in their heads and then discuss it to gain agreement. Women discuss the pros and cons of an action and then, once discussed, come to a decision. This can tend to make men think women are not decisive because they discuss before the decision is made. Men tend to talk in public as a means of establishing their place in society. They are quieter at home. Women are more talkative at home to release stress, and quieter in public as open challenging of an idea is not conducive to collaboration, a main female trait. Men tend to oppose some idea or person for the sport of it at times. Arguing with someone is not a relationship-ending event. Women may oppose ideas, but it is not for fun, and it has the potential, if it develops into a fight, to damage the relationship. Men would not enjoy talking about their struggles and difficulties, as it may put their group status at risk and make them seem weak. Women may tend to enjoy talking about struggles and difficulties, as it has the potential to create camaraderie with others who have experienced similar things. There is the ritual apology. Sometimes we need to hear the actual words, "I'm sorry." Sometimes we can say those words even we were not the ones who made the offense, but you probably know from experience that saying the words can help a situation. At work, if a customer is dissatisfied, it is important for the employee managing the situation to apologize for the situation if you want the customer to leave happy. This is probably why your parents made you say sorry even when you weren't. They were teaching you the ritual of apology. We also have a ritual of opposition, acting as the devil's advocate. Sometimes, and this works well with men but can really backfire with women, it is a good idea to play the bad guy and tease out the problems that could occur with an idea or a proposal. This can lead to better decisions. A wise business leader knows the audience and knows how to play this role. Some advice. If you are going to provide that ritual opposition, it is sometimes best to announce that you are playing the role of devil's advocate so that personal feelings are not injured. Compliments are a ritual we have in the United States. It is perfectly acceptable to compliment another person's choices, such as clothing, items, attitude, accomplishments, etc. Compliments build unity. Supervision without compliments can make employees think they do not do anything well. What gets recognized as a good thing gets repeated is a great mantra for all leaders to take on. Ever wonder why so many people engage in this kind of communication when it really serves seeming no purpose? Small talk is a way that groups cement bonds with each other. Our lives are too complicated to really have sincere conversation with all the people we know. It is enough to have real and meaningful conversation with those we know well and interact with frequently. Other people in our lives, such as our acquaintances, also need to have the bond strengthened through conversation, so we developed the small talk rules. We can ask about weather and offend no one. We can wish each other a good weekend, a great day, or a happy new year and seem like we are wishing actual and meaningful life experiences on the other person, but when we think about it, we realize it's just a ritual, and we are better for that ritual. You will engage in some form of ritual small talk today, most likely. Take stock of how you decided what to say and how the other person responded. Think of all the places you'd use ritual small talk in the business world. On the phone, at conferences, customers, in emails and appraisals, in meetings, while presenting, during sales calls and trade fairs. I'm sure you can think of other places where the lack of small talk would make a transaction seem strange. Please note, some people have communication disabilities. Specific to my mind are the people on the autism spectrum. Autism spectrum disorder is a problem with communication. So if you run into someone who is not following the small talk rituals, consider that they may have a communication disorder and adjust your own communication accordingly. Just when you think you'll need to master gender differences, cultural differences, and personality differences, along comes generational differences to manage as well. Generational theory states that we are born into a cohort of peers and will experience major life events at the same time in our development: childhood, youth, middle age, etc. It is the commonality among us and differences between groups that determines a generation. Research also differs somewhat on the dates. Some groups have hard lines of a generation as 20 years. Others work from seminal events as the turning from one generation to the next. This explains why some generations are 20 years long and others are 15. There is no one definitive answer. Let's start with the oldest generation in the workforce today, the baby boomers. Generally born between 1945 and 1965, they came of age during the 60s, 70s, and early 80s. They were the largest generation in the United States at the time and are now beginning their retirement. They were very stable in their jobs, generally keeping the same career, although they may have shifted companies. They are right now generally in management positions, and they prefer phone calls to texts or other forms of electronic communication. They may struggle with technology. Next, we have Generation X, mostly born between 1965 and 1980. They were a very small generation compared to the boomer generation before them and the millennial generation after them. The kids were the latchkey kids, as they were the children of dual-income parents and were expected to come home, let themselves in, and do their homework by themselves. They seek more of a work-life balance than the generation before them. They are technologically adept, but prefer email as opposed to phone calls of the boomers and the texts of the millennials. They are in upper-level management at this time in the workforce and are frequently taking care of their elderly parents, as well as their children who are having a difficult time in the workplace due to student loan debt and high housing prices. Next are the millennials. The millennials are the largest generation in the workforce today and the largest generation in the United States today. They are the most ethnically and racially diverse population to ever live on this continent. That's the history of the world, people. Born from 1980 to 1998-ish, some researchers say 1995, others say 2000, they are very tech savvy. They demand a work-life balance and are willing to make less money to enjoy work and life more. They will jump from company to company more than other generations and will, on average, have about 7 careers over their lifespan. These are different jobs with different career type focuses. The trends for Generation Z are evolving as this generation is still in school for the most part. They grew up incredibly protected by the parents as the world was a really dangerous place. School shootings became a norm and students remember from elementary school onward doing active shooter drills. As a result, they will tend to seek safer careers. They are technology natives, having learned to work cell phones from the earliest years. They expect individuality in the workplace and do not seek to follow trends that involve larger groups. In the workplace, they are expected to stay with stable jobs and may sacrifice some of home life balance for that security. Ever wonder how the two youngest generations contrast? Do you agree with the infographic? You might want to pause this. Are you right on the cusp of the change in generation? If so, you're a Z-lennial. A bit of both. Diversity in the workplace is more than just hiring people who don't look like you. That is just a start. It is more important to hire people with different life experiences who have different views on problem solving. Businesses that have diverse management are more profitable than those with homogeneous management. Firms with women on the board are less likely to be sued than all-male boards. There really is something to the value of diversity when it is done correctly. Culture really is like fish in water. You will not notice your culture. Chapter 5, Adapting to Differences.